Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Jeff Bullish Show. I have with me John Rarrick. Now, John is the head of marketing at Movius, who specialise in digital marketing, thing that's sort of close to my heart, and the blog's core, and the podcast. They do mobile communications for compliance and for telecom. He's responsible for all brand customer acquisition and partner marketing strategy. So he's got a lot to do between Monday to Friday. And John has held senior marketing leadership roles at T-Mobile, Sprint, and Comcast. And if you notice a theme there, it's got something to do with mobile technologies and companies. But he was the co-founder of a PR company called BullsEye Public Relations. John's area of expertise in the B2B technology space includes brand development, communications, and crisis management. And if you're bored, a good crisis will help you fix that. And digital marketing and social media and digital sustainability programs. We'll talk a little bit about the role of and the passion John has on basically helping digital mobile devices be more sustainable. And that's not about being more digitally sustainable. It's about more ecosystem sustainable. He is passionate about leadership development and building highly efficient, versatile teams. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Great to be here.
So, John, I don't know where to start. Shall we talk about your secret and your original first gig in life, apart from being born, was that your love of music. Let's just go there. So before we get into stuff that really maybe doesn't matter, but let's talk about what really matters, such as music to you. So how did you get stuck into music?
Well, I was always passionate about music. You know, going back even to my high school days, I was in bands playing guitar and singing, and found myself in the theater as well. So I ended up going to a pretty prestigious art school in New York called Purchase College,
Right.
And I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in acting, and actually started my performing arts professional career as an actor. Commercials, soap operas, you know, and regional theater mostly. But man, I loved singing still. And I just gravitated back towards it. And for a solid 6 or 8 years, then that became my job. I was a touring musician. And like all touring musicians, you come off tour pretty penniless. and what do actors and musicians do when they're not acting and singing? They work in restaurants.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah.
So the term "the starving artist" is completely true. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, living in New York, in New York City for most of my life, no shortage of restaurants to come home to work in. And I had friends in that business who decided, you know what, you're not going to be a waiter anymore. You're going to become a manager, and we're going to show you the business. So my first real foray into the business world was in the food and beverage industry. And I guess I had a knack for it because I worked for independent restaurants for a while, and then I started to work for these big restaurant corporations like the Walt Disney Company and a company here in the States called Rainforest Cafe, where it's sort of a restaurant, but there's robotic monkeys and there's rainfall actually happening in the restaurant. So it became more of entertainment, eatery, retail, but it was an enormous just crash course in how to run a business, you know, going from, you know, singing to reading a P&L in the course of just a couple of years for me was, but honestly, I loved it, because I started to find the creativity in business itself. And I continued to pursue that, and it kept leading to bigger and better jobs. And I went from Disney to work at all places for Vince McMahon at World Wrestling Entertainment, who was also looking to open a bunch of large themed eateries. And I started to work in that realm. And it was there that I realized if I stay in restaurant operations much longer, I'm going to not only lose my mind, but probably my family as well, because restaurants, restaurants and happy marriages do not go hand in hand. So they gave me a chance to start moving into more marketing, public relations type activities. And that's where I started to cut my teeth, because World Wrestling Entertainment is mostly a marketing company. And there was no shortage of educational opportunities there. I learned live television production. I learned public relations. And after 9/11, the tourism dried up in New York for, boy, almost a solid 2 years. And it was the right timing for me to get out and do my own thing. And that's when I launched BullsEye PR. That's my brief early business history, going from, performing arts and into full on running multi-million-dollar operations.
So tell us a bit about BullsEye PR. So what was the inspiration to start a PR firm? You saw that as, I suppose, a collection of your expertise and experience and something you enjoyed. Was it that intersection of those three?
Boy, Jeff, you pretty much nailed it. When I was at WWE, I was managing our division's public relation agency. As far as I was working very closely with them, because as a new division, the earned media opportunities we had, I knew were going to be really vital to our success. And I loved working with them. In the back of my mind, I was like, wow, this is something I'd like to do more of. And I picked it up pretty quickly. So when I was done at WWF, a partner of mine, a former business partner of mine, we said, hey, wouldn't it be interesting if we launched a public relations agency, but we only represented brands that we love, trust, and even use in some cases. And so we could wake up every day and only promote things that we really felt great about. And it was him. And he said, well, why don't we? Let's do that, because no one else does that. And he said, listen, if we fail, we'll fail having done something that at least the mission was great and we were on the right track.
Yeah.
So we did it. And for 10 of our 12 years, we followed exactly that course. And every morning I would wake up and just basically talk to the media about things that I already loved. So the story came out really easily. Like, I didn't have to make anything up, because if we didn't love you, we didn't represent you. Right. And it was challenging. It was challenging. I won't kid you. We started with a handful of clients and just the two of us, but we built that company to a multi-million-dollar agency with 25 employees and a lot of sleepless nights. But right. Like I said, we would wake up every day and just have a blast. Mm-hmm. The last couple of years, as we started to get nibbles from companies looking to acquire us, we did deviate a little bit from the plan, and it did take a little bit of the fun out of it. But ultimately, it also kind of led to our exit, which was a successful exit. So I can't say that I regret it completely, but I'm mostly proud about those first 10 years.
Yeah. So what years were they? And like I said, a bit of that technology, I suppose, era placement.
Yeah. So we started in 2001, and we got acquired by a private equity firm in 2012. And throughout that, we represented a number of software companies, telcos. Towards the end, T-Mobile was one of them, which was almost a seamless transition for me when we were done to go work at T-Mobile and just sort of continue on that path. But we also worked for a lot of sustainable technology companies as well. Companies looking to develop, superior battery technology, alternative fuels, and that just really fired me up. So much to the point where I went a little overboard, and I started driving an old Mercedes diesel that ran on French fry oil, and solar panels in the back of the office, and anything we could do that could follow that track. And still to this day, I'm still fascinated with sustainable technology.
So let's jump onto that bandwagon in terms of what you're passionate about in terms of that and mobile and digital sustainability. So you mentioned some things about, and we've talked about things like, we buy a phone for 2 years and throw it out, and then and it's full of rare earths. So tell us a little bit about what you see as what's important in the discussion about digital sustainability. And I suppose you talk about more about digital smartphone sustainability a little bit more, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. So, when we think of, um, I'm going to assume most of your listeners believe that climate change is actually happening. So we'll proceed with that in mind.
I
But,
bet that, yeah.
when you think of climate change, though, most people think of the big ticket items like fossil fuels and, um, you know, smog and all the things that we perceive are really making a radical change. But most people don't think of the little everyday commodity driven issues that are actually adding to global warming. And mobile technology is at the forefront. Who doesn't have a phone? At this point, if you're between 2 years old and 102 years old, it's likely you've got a phone, right?
Yep.
And those phones turn over. I don't know about your plan, but I get an email every couple of years saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
you're eligible for an upgrade, and now the new iPhone 57 is available. So
Yeah.
you need it because it's better than the 56."
Yeah.
And that's the way the world works now. I mean, we're just now conditioned to look for the next technology, whether there's one feature that's better or 15 features that's better. Everybody's queued up for the next one, right?
Yeah.
And we try to recycle them. And I think all the carriers do make an effort to do some recycling. But at the end of the day, 25% of those phones get recycled and 75% of them will end up in a landfill. That is just the reality of it all.
Yeah.
And these devices, they create an enormous amount of carbon equivalents. Every single cell phone, it equals 80 kilos of carbon equivalents a year. 80 kilos. That's an enormous amount when you think of how many phones are out there in the world. And where do what's causing that? It's the device itself producing it. It's the precious metals we have to yank out of the ground by, in many cases, very unethical means. It's the power to charge them day in and day out. But most importantly, it's the power to put them up on the wireless networks that creates that carbon footprint issue. So what we've done, and this was not a mission of ours, and it would be incredibly disingenuous for me to say this, but what we've done at Movius with our multi-line product, which allows you to simply put two numbers on one device solely through software instead of a SIM, is we've helped reduce the amount of phones that a company might need. And when you talk about a company, you're talking about, say, a global tier one bank that might provide 100,000 devices for their employees that might otherwise be carrying two phones, means we have just helped remove 100,000 devices from the world. And to me, we sort of realized that on accident. We were like, hey, as we're looking at our own ESG rating, why don't we look at what we can also do for our customers? And we can help our customers make a big impact on the world. And to me, I'm very proud of that. Just that simple thing. And I think, and you and I talked about it a little bit before we started the show, is I don't think it's about solely about big companies reducing what they're doing. I think it's a lot of smaller companies like what we do. If they all just took a look at what they might be able to do to participate in reducing their customers' carbon footprint, we'd be in a different place right now.
Yeah. So you obviously had an interest about sustainability, and for me too, buying a phone, I generally do turn them over every 2 years. There's only just one feature I'm really keen on for the upgrade, and that's the camera. Yeah. So because we now have essentially a high-end, digital single lens reflex DSLR in our hand now. It's just amazing. And I used to drag around a big digital, lenses and everything with me when I was traveling. I went, I don't need to. And, there's the creativity part of that as well, and lenses and stuff. But yeah, the technology within our smartphones today is just amazing.
It is amazing. And you talk about the camera. I'm the same, Jeff. I just shot a short film in 4K on my iPhone. So the idea of being able to do that even 5 years ago was like, it just was not reachable. And now, I mean, between between the audio and the video capabilities of today's phones, you can almost do anything.
Yeah, exactly. So let's move on to, so been working in a lot of mobile tech companies. So the move to Movius, how did that happen? And then we'll talk about things like, okay, how you go about acquiring customers, what are some of the digital marketing strategies you use, content marketing, whatever, paid. Let's talk about that next. But so you moved to Movius. Why did that happen?
Yeah, so much like my move to T-Mobile after BullsEye, my move to Movius was similar. I had participated in another exit with another agency and was literally packing my bags. So bit of a side story that'll help get us there. I'm also the CEO of a vineyard and winery in Abruzzo, Italy, called Cantina di Rosina,
Okay.
which is a story unto itself. But the brief story is my family 100 years ago were producers of wine in Italy, and then due to the vineyards failing due to a disease that affects grapes called 𝓲𝓵𝓵, they all emigrated to the States in the early 1920s. Well, fast forward 100 years later, I bought back the vineyards.
Oh, wow.
and replanted them all. So I was about to just do that full time.
Yeah.
And I was packing my bags, and I got a call from a friend of mine another former T-Mobile associate, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm packing my bags for Italy." "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm at this place called Movius, and I think we're onto something, and I think you might want to listen to it." And he connected me with 𝓦𝓱𝓪𝓽, our CEO, who showed me the technology that they were working on and what they had cooking. And it took me all of 10 minutes to see the value proposition of Multiline by Movius. And he said, "I think this is something you're going to want to stick around for."
Mm-hmm.
And he was absolutely right. And boy, the last 2 years have been a wild ride. We have just been having a great time. And so the vineyard still going forward. I've got a team in place there that keeps things going. But I'll tell you right now, I am wholly fixated on Multiline by Movius and getting that out there to the world.
So tell us a bit about what that means, because most people wouldn't know what multi-line mobile means or multi-line. Tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Multiline is a digital solution that allows users to put a second dedicated business line on any smartphone. We do it not from the traditional way with a SIM, but through software. And it's actually what we call Phone 3.0. So what was Phone 1.0 was, the first rotary phone, the one on your grandma's wall, the one that you had to dial. And then, as we moved on to Phone 2.0, that was the mobile technology that we know that relies on a tower and a SIM card to connect to it.
Yeah.
What we've done is what we call Phone 3.0, which is being able to connect to that tower through a wireless carrier, but not with a SIM card.
So is this like a virtual SIM, which is basically in almost every phone now that hardly anyone knows about?
Well, it's similar to that in technology. However, it gives you a carrier grade call, but it allows you to interface with all of the communications platforms that you, the end user, typically like to use, from SMS to voice. So it integrates seamlessly into WhatsApp, Microsoft Teams, WeChat, CRMs like Salesforce and HubSpot. And it does it specifically to be able to archive and capture that communication. So it's a perfect compliance tool for highly regulated industries like banking, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, education, first responders, anything where you need to capture those calls or texts and archive them.
Right.
So we archive those on the cloud server of choice of our clients. And that way, if there's ever any issue with a compliance subpoena or audit, everything's in a nice tidy package for them to get to. But most importantly, it allows them to communicate the way they want to, when they want to. And there's no interaction between the SIM, which is the personal, and the multi-line, which is the software. So your data stays completely separate from one another. We're not interested at all in the conversation or text to your Aunt Mary. We just want to make sure that everything that you do from a business standpoint can be captured.
So did the idea come out of trying to meet a compliance challenge? Is that how it happened?
Well, it started as a simple, let's put another number on a phone.
Yes.
And it developed from there. And our first customers were large global tier 1 banks. So we knew we were onto something right away when we created that conduit to cloud storage. And from there, it just took off. And what's been great for our customers is the number remains with them and the data remains with the customer, not the end user. So simply, if you, Jeff, leave your company and you're replaced by Jim, well, that number can easily just be transferred from Jeff to Jim, and it's a seamless transition. So if you're a salesperson for a company, what normally happens in the sales world is Jeff leaves the company, he leaves with all of his contacts and all of the data, and then when he lands at the new company, he just reaches out to the client. Well, now all that data stays with the firm. So we're really here to help protect the firm.
Okay, so there's multiple reasons to use Movius.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah, and while we started as a financial services tool, it has really gone in a number of wonderful different directions, from large hospitality companies with many seasonal employees, so that those numbers can simply be transferred when the new seasonal employees come in, to first responders, so that they've got a separate number they can use, to education, so that teachers and administrators can communicate with parents and students in a much more regulated and secure fashion.
Okay.
So we've taken it in a number of really interesting directions in the last couple of years.
Cool. So it sounds like it started off with trying to solve one problem, ended up being able to solve several problems, which is always one of the biggest reasons a lot of businesses start that succeed. So how do you go about customer acquisition? How do you do digital marketing, which is your role within the organization? So what are some of your key ways for you to grow your customer base? Because you're talking big end of town, really more enterprise than anything else, aren't you?
Yeah, great question. So for the different industry categories that we target, it's a little bit different. Social media comes into play, but almost all of our customers live on LinkedIn. It's not like, I don't have customers on TikTok. So
really,
my job becomes a little bit easier when you think that I don't have to do a lot of analysis to try to figure out, okay, do we have what percentage of my banking customers are on LinkedIn or X or TikTok? They're not there at all. They're all on LinkedIn, and that's where they live. So from a social standpoint, it's been quite easy.
yes.
From a digital advertising standpoint, it's far more challenging, because I've got the same challenges that any B2B company would be. First, identifying who exactly are the decision makers, and then where do they live, and how can I target them from a digital advertising standpoint. I would tell you, though, our most effective means of reaching our customers has been earned media. And it would be that way had I known about public relations or not coming into this. Fortunately, I was quickly able to discover, though, that was going to be a vital tool. So sometimes gifts fall out of the sky from a public relations standpoint, and you may or may not have read, but there's been an awful lot of fines handed down to some large global banks in the last couple of years for mobile communications missteps. And when that happens, we usually find ourselves in those articles. Right. And when we are, it certainly feeds an awful lot of new customer inquiries. And we've been able to find some customers, many customers, due to those articles.
So that would perfectly intersect with your background in PR.
Absolutely.
Because PR is about essentially you're seeing the opportunity in a crisis and a problem within an organization, in that you can solve that PR crisis, not the current one they've got, but the potential future one they may have.
That's right, Jeff. And how that crisis might also translate across multiple industries, which of course it does. Regulated industries have similar communications regulations. So it then led me to start looking at what those are like and researching the earned media opportunities we could find there as well.
Mm. So if you see a crisis emerging, do you reach out and going, we can help you in the future?
Absolutely, Jeff, of course. And any good PR person would be preemptive.
Have I got a
I would tell
solution for you?
that's right. That's right. Now, listen, you know what I'll do sometimes is I'll reach out. If I see someone who's written an article, say for the Wall Street Journal, I'll just let that person know, hey, this looks like something you're interested in writing about. If you continue to in the future, we'd love to be a resource just for you to, if you want to pick my brain on how that's affecting other industries, we're here at your disposal. And listen, good PR people are a resource. They're not a nuisance. And so I've always preferred to just be there as a resource, and it's always paid off.
Right. Okay. Cool. So content marketing, earned media are very important to you then?
Yes, email marketing as well. The email marketing has allowed us to be able to build relationships, but also do it in a multi-touch facet. And I'm very sensitive when I use email marketing to how many times we reach out and touch a prospect, but also making sure that the frequency is predicated on their level of interest and their intent to potentially buy. So I know that I love email marketing if it's something I'm interested in, and I'm a big motorcycle enthusiast. So, and always have been. I restore old motorcycles. So when a company that sells parts for an old Triumph reaches out to me, well, I'll take that all week long. Give me 2 or 3 of those a week. But if I see something I don't want hitting my inbox 3 or 4 times a week, I will be unsubscribing and blocking immediately. So I'm very sensitive to intent to buy.
Okay, cool. So Movius, how's the growth been? Like, how many employees?
Yeah, growth's been sensational in my 2 years here. So we're up to 150 employees. We've got offices. We're headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, 𝓬𝓵𝓷 to be specific. We've got offices in Bangalore, India, and New York as well. So I'm back and forth between here in New York and 𝓬𝓵𝓷, Georgia. I'm in Philadelphia, where I live, but I spend most of my time in New York City or Atlanta office.
So in terms of when did Movius start and how did they get funding? Was it done privately? Like, was it the founder started it what did he bootstrap? How did he do that? So when did Movius start? And number 2, how have you funded growth? Because growth's a good thing, as long as you can fund it.
Yes. So Movius is not a startup, although I would tell you we operate as a startup with that mentality. And most people assume we're a startup, but the company has been around 25 years and has had many different lives.
Right.
So started building beeper infrastructure for some of the larger beeper companies back in the day. And I don't know about you, but my beeper has not gone off in quite some time.
So you're calling a beeper is a
paging
paging device.
Yeah, the old paging devices. Yeah. So
I used to have one of those actually.
Yeah.
But yeah. When you didn't have mobile phones and then you had to get this call, then you had to go and try and find.
That's right.
Was it a phone booth? I don't know. No. Look, I think mobile phone I started using late 80s, so it's not too much, but the beeper was where you had a crisis happening. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted the beeper versus pager conversation. Okay.
That's right. So yeah, and then when the pager started to go the way of the dodo, we pivoted to voicemail infrastructure for wireless carriers. And I don't know about you, but again, voicemail definitely not playing a big role these days, and hasn't for quite some time. And mostly, I'm deleting voicemail at this point in my life. Yeah. So we pivoted again as needs, and I think good technology companies continue to innovate, and we certainly did with the invention of multi-line. And to answer your question about funding, always been privately funded and continue to be. The multi-line product has has certainly sparked the interest of investors because it's one of those products that certainly has legs beyond what you see today. Like we also have a pretty robust AI division where we've been able to integrate some really cool AI solutions with our multi-line product. For instance, we have a product called 𝓬𝓪, and I want to just talk about how that came about. The use of 𝓬𝓪 came about in a really interesting way. We had assumed, Jeff, when we started to have success in the financial services industry, we said, hey, I bet the pharmaceutical industry would love to use this multi-line product because they're also highly regulated and their sales force can't just be rattling off claims to doctors and calling doctors willy-nilly. So why don't we talk to them? Well, something kind of kicked in the back of my head. I said, let's not assume anything. Why don't we gather a bunch of pharma executives together and have some focus groups? And I'm glad we did, because what we realized was, while that was certainly a use case for multi-line, they were much more interested in potentially using multi-line for clinical trials, because coming out of COVID, no one had really created a turnkey method of doing a remote clinical trial, and they were struggling to be able to do them.
Right.
We have an AI sentiment analyzer called 𝓬𝓪. Now, we're not the only ones, clearly, that have, call sentiment analyzers. But what 𝓬𝓪 does is it's a two-way call sentiment analyzer with an uncanny ability to really be able to read emotion in the call and to be able to claw through the data at a very, very rapid clip at scale. So what we've done for the pharma industry is create this really nice tandem product of teaming up multi-line with 𝓬𝓪 so that you can now do a remote clinical trial conversation, capture that discussion, and from the doctor, or they call them the clinicians or trial investigator, with the patient, and to be able to claw through things like, my elbow itches at noon when I take the drug, or you name it. I'm in a lot of pain at 2 p.m. When you think of thousands and thousands of calls having to go through, say, Zoom conversation recordings and try to collate that data manually, it's virtually impossible.
Yeah.
So we've been able to help pharma companies now keep on track. Every day that they go over schedule for clinical trials can be as much as $100,000. So you just now think about what that looks like when they go weeks and months over schedule. And we've been able to help keep them on track, but also, mostly important, we've been able to keep the patients safe because the data from those trials is all collated and logged.
Cool. So essentially, you're saving the time of the pharmacy industry when they're doing these, tests.
That's right. But it's really about patient welfare at the end of the day. I mean, it's great that we've been able to save the customers money, but their goal is mostly to get to market on time, but to make sure that they've got the best product for their patients.
Right. So what are the other roles of AIs that you're exploring at the moment, without giving away too much? Where do you see AI being used in mobile communications? Where do you see that unfolding in the next few years? Because a lot of the creativity is going to come out of combining different combinations and doing things in ways that were never imagined, because the technology allows us to do that, such as AI. So what are some of the things that you see exciting for the role of AI and mobile technologies?
Jeff, I'm really excited about the potentials for AI in public safety,
Right.
Particularly when it comes to first responder public safety, and how we can make some of these large public places, for instance, airports, safer using AI, being able to parse out particular sounds and being able to parse out particular visuals between what might and what might not be dangerous, and to be able to notify first responders. I'm fascinated with being able to apply the technology for things like that. Anything that can help save lives and keep people safer out there, to me, that's a great use of AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and essentially, because it can scale so quickly, because sometimes when a crisis happens, like there was a PR exercise with a company in Australia, mobile company, telecommunications company, and its call centers couldn't handle the inquiry. So So AI to help scale a crisis management.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Help us get there quicker and safer, I
Okay.
think is the key. And listen, we wake up every day and read about uses for AI that to me seem frivolous.
Mm.
And likely are, but maybe some of those frivolous uses are going to help us refine them for real reasons. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with the direction things are going, as long as ultimately we apply that technology to something that can actually make the world a better place.
Yeah. And I think the area you mentioned with in the pharma area, and not talking about pharma on the farm. We're talking about pharma companies, pharmaceutical companies.
Correct.
I think the opportunities lie in medicine with AI are just mind-boggling. The challenge is sometimes dragging an old industry into a new world, because like even before COVID happening, you had to send information via a fax to the doctor, or the doctor would never call you. It's like, what? Anyway, so I think medicine, being very traditional, centuries old in terms of as an industry, is being dragged kicking and screaming into the future, which is great.
That's right. And listen, ironically, you mentioned pharmaceutical and not farms, as in farming. But another fascinating use that's really exciting for me to watch happen is the use of AI in agriculture.
Yes.
And that is bringing a new technology to the oldest industry out there
Yeah.
possible. So you've got a lot of small and medium-sized farms that are so resistant to the technology, yet if we can get it right, can have such an impact on the world, being able to increase yields and increasing safety on farms and large scale agricultural institutions. So that to me is also incredibly exciting. And there's been some major advancements just in the last couple of years on that front as well.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's the challenge for us as humans is quite often we're limited by our own frameworks and habits and routines and templates that have been imposed since we're born. Whereas I think one of the things that interests me is the intersection of AI and creativity, in that people say, well, AI is going to take away our creativity. I think it's actually just going to amplify it. And especially if we use it as a tool, not as a replacement, but as a tool. And I think using AI to come up with new combinations and intersections of ideas in ways that we as humans, look, we're pretty good at pattern recognition, but I tell you what, big data is even better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just to wrap it up, there's a question I always ask. So what brings John real deep joy? And it might be several things. It might be a happiness ecosystem. What brings John great joy?
Maybe this could be seen as a positive or a negative personality trait in mine. But I suppose at the end of the day, I'm a bit of a people pleaser. And I think everybody that has ever been involved in PR probably is, right? We love to tell a good story. We like to see the reaction of telling that story. I've always wanted to make sure that whatever I was doing was going to bring some happiness or joy to the world. And the only times I've ever left jobs was when I saw that wasn't happening. And I'd seek out what was bringing joy. So I would tell you, if you're waking up any day at all, and you're doing something that doesn't make the world a better place or bring some joy to some person, you might be off track. And that's just me. I can't speak for everybody out there. I can only speak for myself.
That's all we want.
But there's something about even my business, making wine, there's something about watching someone's face when they take a sip and they enjoy what they've had or they love it, that just makes my day. And that's a very small piece of the puzzle. We talked about, potentially having a small impact on global warming. Like that's a much larger piece of the puzzle. But I think if you embrace every day with how can I make the people around me a little better than they were yesterday?
Yeah.
What else can you ask for?
Okay, that's fantastic. And what I'm hearing is that essentially it's making a difference, whether it's something you create or something you say for people, and that gets you up in the morning.
Spot on.
Thanks, John, for sharing what brings you deep happiness. I've discovered that happiness is complicated because it means many things to many people. And, we can break it into two areas. We can bring you, I suppose, fleeting joy versus deep sustained joy. And you've just talked about deep sustained joy. And thank you very much for sharing.
Pleasure being here, Jeff.